In this video, let's go over how to solve problems involving functions, function addition, and composition using hypatia. So in our first problem, we suppose that f of x equals 3x squared and that g of x equals 5x plus 3. And we're asked to find f plus g of x. So let's start by inserting a check math evaluate node. And notice there's this new prompt up top, assume. And so here we can define the functions f of x and g of x, and then down here in the evaluate, if we simply type f of x, it will interpret it as what we've assumed it to be. So let's start by assuming that f of x is, I'll use the arrow keys to move over here, 3x squared. Get out of the exponent with the arrow keys, press enter to create a new line, and we also want to assume that g of x is 5x plus 3 as is given above. So now we've assumed f of x and g of x. We can move down here to our evaluate. Now f plus g of x can be written as f of x plus g of x, and then we can simply take each of these, take the sum. So f of x is 3x squared. If we wait, we'll notice that check math realizes that this is wrong, and that's true. I haven't evaluated g of x yet, so let's add that in, 5x plus 3. And if we wait for check math, it shows us that we have done this correctly. Okay, so now we have one more problem ready down here, problem 2. This is to do with function composition. So again, we're asked, we're given an f of x, x squared, and g of x to be sine x, and we're asked to find f of g of x and also g of f of x. So again, let's open up a check math evaluate node, and let's define f of x and g of x as we did before. So f of x is x squared, and g of x is sine x. So first, let's do f of g of x. So we can type f of g of x equals sine squared x. So we see that Hypatia's marked this as correct. Good. Now we can move on to the second part. We hit enter to create a new line. And now we want to find g of f of x. And this is simply sine of x squared. And again, Hypatia's marked this as correct. So we know that our work is correct. Now, just for fun, we could see what would happen if I hadn't written the definition of f of x here, if I had just written f of x. So we can use the arrow keys, get rid of the x squared, and just write f of x. And we'll see that Hypatia realizes that f of x, we've defined it as before, and so this is correct. And so I could add a new line, and then in this line I could write f of x out as x squared. And again, Hypatia realizes that this is correct and checks our work for us. So this has been a quick overview of using functions and function compositions with Hypatia.